A child wandered the aisles alone, asking for a mother who didn't exist. Mara noticed him near the end of her shift, when the grocery store had thinned to echoes and the floor buffers distant whine. She was facing up cans in the soup aisle, turning labels forward out of habit more than instruction, when a small voice drifted down the row. It wasn't crying. It was careful, almost polite. "Excuse me, have you seen my mother?" Mara looked up, expecting a tired parent a few steps behind, a cart rattling closer. Instead, there was only the boy, standing between towers of discounted chicken noodle and tomato bisque. He couldn't have been more than 6. Too small to be alone this late. He wore a gray sweatshirt without a logo and sneakers with the toes scuffed smooth. His hair lay flat, as if pressed down by a hat he'd removed and forgotten. "No," Mara said, her voice dropping into the register she used for lost kids. "Where did you last see her?" The boy considered this, eyes flicking past Mara to the end cap display, then back. "Here," he said. "She told me to wait." Mara glanced at her watch. It was 11:47 p.m. The store closed at midnight. The manager had already done the last call over the intercom, his voice stretched and tinny by the speakers. Most of the lights in the garden center were off, leaving that section a darkened glass mouth at the front of the building. "Okay," Mara said. "Let's go to customer service. We can make an announcement." The boy didn't move. He stood very straight, hands at his sides, like he was posing for a picture. "She doesn't answer announcements." "That's all right," Mara said. "We'll try anyway." She started down the aisle, expecting the soft slap of sneakers behind her. After a step or two, she realized he hadn't followed. She turned. He was still there, between the cans, his gaze fixed on the far end of the store where the freezers hummed. "Come on," she said and held out her hand. He looked at her hand as if he'd never seen one offered that way. Then slowly he took it. His skin was cool. Not clammy, just cooler than the air-conditioned store. She felt a brief, inexplicable urge to pull back, the way you might when touching a metal railing in winter. She ignored it and led him toward the front. As they walked, she took in details without meaning to. He didn't swing his arm. He matched her pace exactly, step for step. When they passed the produce misting system, he didn't flinch at the sudden hiss. When a shopping cart squealed somewhere near the dairy case, he didn't turn his head. At customer service, the counter was unattended. The last cashier was counting down a register, her back to them. Mara pressed the call button, chimed once, then went silent. "What's your mom's name?" Mara asked, crouching to be level with him. He opened his mouth, closed it. His brow furrowed, not in confusion but in effort. "She has a voice," he said. "Everyone hears it." Mara smiled, a reflex. "Does she have a name?" He shook his head. "She doesn't need one." The cashier glanced over, frowned, and came around the counter. "What's this?" "Lost kid," Mara said. "He's looking for his mom." The cashier bent slightly. "Sweetie, where's your mother?" The boy looked past her, past Mara, toward the entrance where the automatic doors stood closed, reflecting the store back at itself. "She's here," he said. "She always is." The cashier straightened. "I'll get Tom," she said, already turning toward the manager's office. When she was gone, the store seemed to hold its breath. The floor buffer's whine cut off. The lights buzzed, then settled. The boy's grip tightened on Mara's hand, not squeezing, just anchoring. "Do you remember coming in with her?" Mara asked. "Yes." "What was she wearing?" He tilted his head. "Lights," he said after a moment. "She wears lights." Mara laughed softly, then stopped when he didn't smile. His eyes were a flat brown, darker than she'd thought at first. They reflected the fluorescent strips overhead in a way that made them seem deeper, as if there was more surface than eye. "Do you live nearby?" she asked. "She brought me," he said. "From before." "Before what?" He shrugged, a small, economical motion. "Before the aisles." Tom emerged from the office, keys jangling. He took in the scene, nodded once. "We'll call it in," he said. Mara, can you stay with him? She nodded. The boy watched Tom with interest, tracking the keys as they swung. When Tom picked up the phone, the boy's gaze flicked to the ceiling speakers. The announcement crackled to life. Tom's voice echoed, asking for the parent or guardian of a lost child to come to customer service. The boy winced, just barely, as if at a frequency only he could hear. That's not her voice, he said. No, Mara said. What does her voice sound like? He closed his eyes. For a second, she thought he might be about to cry. Instead he said, like this place, when it's empty. Tom finished the announcement and hung up. We'll give it a few minutes, he said. If nobody comes, we call the police. The word police made the boy open his eyes. They can't help, he said. They don't remember. Remember what? Mara asked. The first time, he said, when she learned to speak. A shiver ran up Mara's arms, unconnected to the cool air. Who learned to speak? The boy looked at her, really looked, as if aligning her face with something else. My mother. The automatic doors slid open without anyone approaching. Night air washed in, carrying the smell of wet asphalt. Beyond the glass, the parking lot lay empty under sodium lights. The doors slid shut again. Tom frowned. Must be a sensor glitch. The boy smiled then, a small, pleased expression. She does that, he said, when she's listening. Mara's gaze went to the ceiling speakers, the camera domes, the glowing exit signs. She became aware of the store as a body. The hum of refrigeration, the pulse of the HVAC, the faint ticking of cooling metal. A system awake after hours. Tom, she said quietly. What time was this store built? Tom blinked. What? Just, do you know? Late 70s, he said. Why? The boy's smile widened. She was quiet then, he said. She watched. She learned. The lights flickered. Just once. Long enough for shadows to leap and settle. The boy's reflection in the glass doors lagged, then caught up. Mara let go of his hand. The cold lingered on her palm. Tom cleared his throat. Okay, he said, forcing a laugh. That's enough stories. What's your name, buddy? The boy hesitated. She hasn't given me one yet. The intercom chimed, not the call tone. Something else, a pre-recorded alert Mara had never heard. The speakers hissed, then a woman's voice filled the store. Warm, familiar, the voice of shopping lists and closing times and blue light specials. Attention, valued guests, it said. We will be closing shortly. The boy's shoulders relaxed. He turned toward the sound, eyes shining. That's her, he whispered. The voice continued, smoothing consonants, lingering on vowels. Please bring your final selections to the front. Mara's mouth went dry. She had heard that voice for years. She had never thought of it as belonging to anyone. Mom, the boy called. The lights brightened, imperceptibly, as if the store leaned closer. Somewhere deep in the building, a relay clicked. The automatic doors slid open, then shut, then open again, welcoming no one. Tom backed away from the counter. This isn't funny, he said. The boy didn't look at him. He took a step toward the aisles, toward the long, glowing corridors that seemed to stretch farther than they had before. She says I can go with her this time, he said. She says she remembers me now. Wait, Mara said, and surprised herself by how much she meant it. He paused at the end of the aisle, where the light fell just a little too evenly. You should go, he said, not unkindly. She doesn't like it when people stay after. The intercom fell silent. The hum deepened, a contented sound. Mara watched the boy walk away, his small figure dissolving into the geometry of shelves and light. For a moment she thought she saw another shape moving with him, an absence outlined by brightness. When the store finally went dark, the last thing Mara noticed was the way the automatic doors stayed open, breathing, as if waiting for a child to come home. The clerk noticed a figure standing in the freezer aisle, but the glass reflected nothing. Evan told himself it was a trick of angles. The freezer doors were old, warped frames, cloudy seals, fluorescent lights that buzzed like trapped insects. At this hour, close to midnight, the store reduced itself to reflections and echoes. A person could disappear between them if you weren't looking straight on. Still, he stopped pushing his cart of cardboard and plastic wrap. The figure stood halfway down the frozen foods aisle, facing the doors. Tall, unmoving. Its outline was precise enough that Evan could tell where the shoulders ended and the head began. Yet when he shifted his weight and the angle changed, the glass showed only rows of boxed dinners and pale, stacked ice cream tubs. No shadow. No second shape behind his own. "Hey!" Evan called, keeping his voice casual. "We're closing in 10. The store swallowed the word 10. The figure didn't react. Evan waited for the usual follow-up. A startle, an apology, the shuffle of someone realizing how late it had gotten. He waited long enough to feel foolish, then pushed the cart again, wheels rattling softly over the tiled seam between aisles. As he drew closer, cold bled through the glass. Not the clean, sealed chill of refrigeration, but something damp and breathy, like air exhaled from underground. The hum of the freezers deepened, falling into sync, a low note that vibrated faintly in his teeth. "You okay there?" Evan asked. The figure was clearer now. It wore what looked like a dark jacket, the hem stopping just above the knees. Its head was inclined slightly, as if reading labels through the glare. Evan could see texture where fabric should crease, but when he leaned sideways, checking the reflection again, there was still nothing but his own narrow face and the aisle stretching behind him. He reached out and tapped the glass with one knuckle. The sound came back wrong. Not the sharp tink he expected, but a muffled thud, as if the door were padded. His knuckle tingled, a faint numbness spreading. The figure turned. Evan felt the moment before it happened, the way you feel a drop in pressure before a storm. The movement was smooth, continuous, no joints catching, no weight shifting. Its face came into view, and for a second Evan thought it was simply blurred by the glass. Then he realized the blur didn't move when he blinked. Where a face should have been, there was depth without detail. A shallow hollow, like a reflection waiting to happen and failing. The edges suggested features, cheeks, a nose, but nothing resolved. It was as if the idea of a person had been pressed into soft material and lifted away. Evan took a step back. His heel bumped the cart. The sound snapped through the aisle, loud as a dropped plate. "Store's closed," he said, louder now. "You need to head up front." The figure remained where it was, but the glass doors around it began to cloud, frost feathering outward from the seals in thin, branching lines. Evan watched them creep, delicate and deliberate, spelling nothing he could read. Behind him, somewhere near Produce, a light flickered. Once, twice. It steadied again, but the store felt subtly rearranged, aisles stretching just a little longer than before. Evan glanced toward the end of the aisle. The opening looked farther away. "You can't stay here," he said, though he wasn't sure who he was telling. The figure raised one arm. The gesture was slow, careful, like someone testing water temperature. His hand stopped inches from the glass. Where fingers should have been, there were smooth extensions, their ends blunted. The frost thickened around them, whitening the view. Evan's radio crackled at his hip. "Last call," came Maria's voice, thin and distant. "Anyone still shopping?" The transmission cut out mid-syllable. The figure leaned closer, the hollow where its face was pressed near the glass, and Evan felt a pressure behind his eyes, a sense of being looked at without being seen. The freezer hum rose, joined by another sound. A faint, a rhythmic tapping, as if something were moving behind the shelves, knocking gently from the inside. Evan backed away, heart ticking too fast. "I'm getting my manager," he said. The figure's head tilted. Understanding, maybe, or mimicry. As Evan turned, the aisle lights dimmed. Not off, but lowered, like a theater before a show. The freezers along both sides exhaled in unison, fogging the glass from within. The tapping grew closer, answering itself up and down the aisle. He didn't run. He told himself running would make it worse. He pushed the cart forward, then abandoned it when the wheels caught on something that hadn't been there before. A ridge in the floor, cold to the touch, rhymed with frost. At the end of the aisle, he looked back. The figure stood exactly where it had been. But now, faintly, impossibly, a reflection had begun to form in the glass. It was not Evan. The reflected shape was elongated, its proportions subtly wrong, as if stretched by distance. Its surface mirrored the aisle behind it, but warped. Boxes bending, lights curving inward. The face was still absent, but the hollow now held a suggestion of depth, a corridor receding. Evan felt a pull, a gentle insistence, like the memory of a place he had stood too long ago to trust. He remembered, suddenly, the old store that had been torn down to build this one. The rumors about sinkholes, about cold spots where freezers failed no matter how often they were repaired. The tapping stopped. The figure lowered its hand. The frost retreated, drawing back into the seals. The lights brightened. For a moment, everything looked normal. Then the reflection stepped forward. Not out of the glass, into it. The aisle behind the figure in the reflection deepened, stretching away into darkness that didn't match the store's layout. Evan saw, with a sinking clarity, shelves that weren't stocked, doors that led nowhere, a version of the place that had been emptied and kept empty, waiting. The figure turned its hollow face toward him again. This time, the reflection showed a mouth opening where there was none, the shape of a question. Evan understood then. Not what it was, he didn't have words for that, but what it wanted. Not him exactly. Not yet. It wanted to be seen correctly, to be acknowledged by the glass, by the lights, by the careful order of the store. It wanted a place. The radio at Evan's hip crackled back to life. "Evan," Maria said. "You there? I can't find you." The sound anchored him. He took a step back, then another. The pull weakened, like a tide going out. The figure didn't follow. It simply watched, head tilted, as if committing the moment to memory. Evan turned and walked, then quickened, then finally ran, shoes slapping too loud on tile that seemed to resist him. He didn't stop until he reached the front, until the automatic doors slid open and the night air cut clean and sharp across his skin. Maria found him there, pale and shaking. He tried to explain, but the words collapsed under their own weight. She walked the freezer aisle with him. Everything looked normal. The glass reflected them both side by side. They closed the store early. Later, at home, Evan lay awake replaying the moment the reflection had moved. He stared at his bedroom mirror, at his own face resolving as it always had. Just before sleep took him, he thought he saw the glass deepen, just slightly, as if making room.